Hello, hoping you're doing good and safe. Hoping also your families are safe under the current COVID-19 situation. Please be safe and take care of yourself. Welcome to our new lecture together. This is the fourth lecture together about democracy and human rights. As we started to talk previously, we are agreed that we're going to discuss certain patterns of terms, terminology, definitions, aspects, features, types, etc., etc. We still in chapter number one. In the last previous lecture, we started to talk about certain types of democracy. Let's start our lecture together with a small review for the previous lecture and talk more and more about types of democracy and analyze things together. So let's start. As we mentioned before, we talked about direct democracy, trustee model, delegation model. We talked about elite, indirect, representative, etc., etc. Let's differentiate again between certain types and see we might have like more depth analysis for these patterns. Um, let's review certain issues. We talked about democracy. We differentiate between direct democracy, representative. We talked about we might have like representative and parliamentary, which we're going to talk about today. Democracy, remember always, it is all about the voice of people. In democracy, we do concentrate on certain issues. People must vote, individual rights protected, law to protect, majority rule, and minority voice. Forms of democracy, direct, all people vote on all decisions, and representatives, people vote for elected officials to vote on issues for them. In direct democracy, we vote on issues directly. The advantage of this democracy actually is that everyone is there. There are a space for everyone. People have all the power. Everyone, young, small, old, male, female, they are all participating. This advantage is uninformed. People vote on issues only works in small groups. It is unapplicable anymore in nowadays life. Like you cannot ever have direct democracy nowadays. Okay, representative democracy. Remember that people elect officials, or we call them politicians, representatives, whatever you want to call them, to make decisions for them and propose laws. So I do elect someone on behalf of me or my people or my nation to take decisions, make a law to protect me and to serve my interests. The advantage of this model, people can choose experts to make and carry out decisions. Disadvantage, leader may not represent people's interest because you are not there. And if you're not there, how would you guarantee that they are talking on behalf of you or they are taking your interest into consideration? People can still make law sometimes with certain phenomena like revolutions or rebellions or with certain referendums. But the dilemma with the representatives democracy, once they get elected, they will be there minimum for 4 years. And 4 years actually is a long time. And the censorship or the follow-up is not easy actually. Okay. Um, I decided to have these shapes just to facilitate our mission and to build things inside your mind into a clear way. Let's think together. What do you think? Does this shape say it's a direct or representative democracy? We have a chain, people, representative, laws, decisions, etc. This is exactly the pattern of representative democracy. I will elect certain official or politicians. They will take laws in front of me. But see, it is a vertical level of representation. People will be absent from the process of making decisions and building laws, and this is the most dangerous aspect of representative democracy. Like, even if these people are experts, even if they have great experience and they have access for all the information and data and etc etc, it like affect the core idea of democracy, to have everyone involved, to have all people participating in shaping the political economic system. By this way, we still have a gap. Like, say, here we are going to have a gap between um, selecting these representatives and creating these laws. In this, people are absent. They are not there anymore. And if they are not there anymore, they don't know exactly the process of producing such laws, whether these processes are taking into consideration fully their interests, or these representatives are having other agendas or other interests, and they are putting them in the top of their priorities over people priorities. So again, definitely it is the modern level of representation, and it is the modern type of democracy, but it's still very dangerous, because we could never know when these officials or politicians stop representing people in a very good way. And this, it is direct, but it is a little bit unacceptable and unapplicable anymore. It's only with a small group of people. But we have other philosophers, thinkers like communism, Marx, and other communism we are going to discuss later. They still believe of direct democracy, and they said the community where people are absent from decision-making process is not a fair community, and it is definitely unjust state. So they still believe of this shape of tracking between people and laws, but they maybe failed in putting good model or good maybe methodology or theory to protect the direct role of people in building laws. Even if you think about referenda or election or certain tools, I don't know like what, but there's still a degree of interaction. It's like not everyone there, and once not everyone there, it means we are classifying people upon certain aspects of features, and this is totally discrimination, which is totally against the idea and the concept of democracy. Democracy believes everyone is equal, everyone has the equal opportunity to reach resources and interfere in the political economic system. So they still believe in that track, but they don't know how to apply it and to which level this might be sufficient, especially in the crazy fast world today. So, if we're going to talk more deep in this, we might talk about the presidential democracy. The executive leader, we can call it the president, is voted directly by people. The executive is separate from legislative branch. People also vote directly for other representatives in the legislative branch. The president appoints member of the cabinets and Supreme Court. Why do you think they have this pattern of democracy? As we were talking a minute ago, they were afraid that to have a small group of representatives or politician or official is not enough. We might have like other bodies or other um, pattern of representation to open other gates of representation, to minimize the gap between people and decision making, and to have more than one perspective of representation, which will definitely guarantee better outcome from their perspective. So the need of presidential democracy was a result of understanding that in spite of it is very impossible to have direct democracy, it is very important to protect the track of people interference in decision making process. Okay, parliamentary democracy actually it is a pattern of representative more relevant to the legislative branch. Um, these members of the parliament are directly voted or indirectly voted. We're going to talk about how it would be directly and indirectly, but I want you to first understand the couple 3 points. Number one, representatives of the legislative branch are voted for directly by the people. Number two, the legislative branch then appoints the prime minister, who is similar to the president in the presidential democracy. The prime minister appoints members of the cabinet and the Supreme Court to be later on ministers and to form the government out of the structure. Uh, some countries they are voting for the parliament in an indirect way. How? They will vote for a list of candidates, or they are going to vote for a party, a political party, and this party will relist the candidates based on certain criteria or etc. For example, here in Palestine, you do vote for one list. Either you vote for Fatah list or Hamas list, or for example, الجبهة الشعبية list. So you cannot choose whether you want X, Y, Z. You're going to vote for the party itself, and the party itself will determine the members inside the lists, and it will be a percentage from these lists. So even this parliamentary or representative pattern is not very accurate because it is a little bit ambiguous. Like, what if I want to vote to one member of this list and one member of that list? Definitely, you cannot do this in certain systems. So still the representative models still have certain problems relevant to which degree they are really reflecting people's needs and perspectives. Okay, we started to discuss types of democracies, and as we agreed, inside each type, we have models. Like inside the representative, we have like presidential, we have parliamentary, we're going to see mixed. Let's discuss the American system, for example. When the United States was founded, the founders created what they call democratic republic, a system of government in which the power to govern comes from the people, but elected officials represent their interests, needs, perspectives, point of views. The system of government allows American citizens to participate in government in many ways. What I want you to understand that before the United States was founded in this shape, a huge civil war was happened. And this is, as we mentioned in the beginning of this course, the progress of each state determine the track of the development of democracy. Like if we're going to talk about France, for example, or the French system, we can see also French had a civil war, but it is a little bit different from America. That's why we're going to see two faces, two models, two different patterns of democratic out of the war or the civil war. So back to the American example, uh, the complicated structure of the representative model in America allows more number of citizens to participate. Why do we use the example of United States? Because actually they have a multi-level representative system, which again allow more people to be involved in the decision-making process and the political and the participatory political life in general. The United States also has many different levels and branches of government that any citizen or group might approach. Many people take this as evidence that you as citizens, especially as represented by competing groups, can influence government actions. They say, or they do believe that there is a huge relation, a strong relation between the number of citizens who are involved in decision making and the ability to change the track and the strategies of each country. So, as long as I have more people are involved, I would guarantee that the government will seek the interest of the people more and more and more. However, some political theorists argued that this is not exactly the case. These differences or these different opinions have supported three popular models of democracy: participatory, pluralist, and elite. So again, we do have general types, and inside each type you might have several models as well. Okay. We can see each model of democracy in American government today, actually. That's why we decided to talk about the structure or the political system of America, because they have this variety in designing the participation approach. In this course, we're going to define participatory, pluralists, and elite democracy and describe examples for each of them. Okay, let's talk about participatory democracy. Participatory democracy is a model of democracy in which citizens have the power to make policy decisions. Participatory democracy emphasizes the broad participation of people in politics. However, this is not a direct democracy in which citizens are directly responsible for making decisions or making policies. In a participatory democracy, citizens can influence policy decisions. Do you remember the shape when we said it is important to have them, but they were trying to think for an alternative solution? So they created this participatory approach to fill the gap between the decision-making process and citizens. And they said it will be satisfying to allow all citizens to influence the decision-making process, to be part of this process in a way or another, but not making these decisions. Politicians are still responsible for the implementation of these policies, decision-making processes, etc. But citizens can influence these decisions either by stopping them or changing them or intervening in any situation. The United States doesn't have a pure participatory democracy, but at some levels of government, we can see examples of participatory democracy playing out. Okay, let's have certain examples of participatory democracy nowadays. We can see participatory democracy, for example, in local and state forms of government, where citizens have multiple access points to influence policymakers. Town hall meetings are a way for local and national politicians to meet with politicians decision makers, etc., to hear their opinions on topic they are interested in or to discuss upcoming legislation. Another important point is the assemblies or the gathering for students, workers, etc., etc. These associations or assemblies can defined as part of the participatory approach. Once they are not a political party, they are part of the community shaping certain assemblies or bodies that reflect the point of view of a group of people gathering upon certain identity, job, career, etc. So the importance of these assemblies, they are enhancing the concept of participatory democracy. Okay, another example, certain initiatives and referendums are two ways in which local and state governments allow for citizens to influence policies and decision-making process. An initiative is a process that allows citizens by bypass their state legislatures by placing proposed laws on the ballot. Some states even allow citizens to place constitutional amendments on the ballot. So it is nice to have these tools, but actually it is very expensive. It costs a lot of effort, money, um, and time, because not every time you do have the capacity to implement such tools. Actually, it would be very complicated, very expensive, and it will cost you a lot of time, especially sometimes you need to take decisions in a critical situations or in responding to certain threats. So you definitely won't have time for all of that. Um, Referring to the United States example, it's only 24 states have an initiative process. Nevada is one of these states. In 2016, the state of Nevada voted on Nevada background checks for gun purchases. Question 1, which would require individuals who intended to purchase guns from someone who doesn't have a firearms license to undergo a background check. So again, it is applicable, but it would cost a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money also. It is not cheap to implement such tools and to have all the time staff, people to implement such activities actually. Another tool could be the popular referendum. On the other hand, allows voters to approve or repeal an act of the state legislative process. Similar to initiatives, voters sign a petition to get the major on the next ballot. But popular referendums differ in that the law in a question has already passed in the state legislative process or legislative court or whatever. For example, in 2016, Mayan conducted a referendum vote on a measure that would outlaw hunting bears after beating them, which they fund. Because ants are so popular for controlling minutes per population, voters overwhelmingly defeated the measure. Both initiatives and referendums show how local and state governments allow for the broad participation of voters to influence policymaking, to interfere in the track of policies. Elected representatives are then responsible for enacting the decisions of their constituents. Okay, let's talk about pluralist pluralist democracy. Pluralist democracy is a model of democracy in which no single group dominates politics and organized groups compete with each other to influence policy. We see examples of pluralist democracy at both the state level and the federal level, actually. As in participatory democracy, anyone can participate in influencing political decisions. But in pluralist democracy, individuals work through groups formed around common cases. Pluralist democracy is a part of a new track of forming maybe civil society. Theorists who back pluralist democracy argue that people self-select which causes they want to spend their time on, then support these groups. Those groups then compete over gaining support from notable politicians who will advocate their interests in a way or another. Let's have certain examples as we did with the previous types. Let's have certain examples for pluralist democracy today. The most notable example of pluralist democracy in America, in the American political system, is the role of that interest group play in political decision today. Interest groups are groups of people who attempt to influence policies or policy makers or decision makers to support their own position, interests, identities, and goals, and their perspective on certain interests or concerns. We're going to talk a lot about interest group and within like 2 or 3 lectures. But what I want you to know here, interest group is part of all of this process to transfer the modern into to transfer the pattern of democracy into a pluralist democracy pattern. We're going to talk deeply about interest groups later, as I did, but I want you to know that these interest groups might be so dangerous. Zionist interest group, or lobby, we might also call them the lobbies, is one of the most dangerous lobbies and interest groups ever. The final pattern for today is the elite democracy. Elite democracy is a model of democracy in which a small number of people, usually those who are wealthy or well educated, influence political decision making. Advocated by some of the farmers, like Alexander Hamilton, for example, the elite democratic model argues that participation in politics should be limited to a small group of highly informed individuals who can make the best decisions for all citizens. Again, they are giving the priority for certain classes who they do believe they have more skills, competencies, experience, and knowledge over everyone else. Okay, let's talk about examples of elite. For example, we can see the influence of the elite democracy today in the structure of electoral college. Also, the people popularly elect a presidential candidate. The electoral college serve as a check on the potential tyranny of the majority. In U.S. history, there have been 3 presidential elections in which the people popularly elected one candidate for president, but the other candidate won the electoral college and therefore the presidency. Let's summarize very short challenges for democracy, complexity of the issues. We're going to talk about the limitation of participation, raising campaigns cost, the cost of money, time, the gridlock of policies. We're going also to discuss these challenges more and more in the coming lectures. Thank you so much for joining me for this long lecture, actually. Hoping you're doing great. Please be safe and see you soon.